the law of attraction, like the defense meeting defense was
Yep.
like eye-opening for her, like kind of blew her mind because she realized how much throughout her career she'd already kind of gone in with her back up a little bit and how it was not serving her. But as soon as she could take, like, just be aware of how that energy around frustration like pulled her down, she could like find the antidote or the other side of it. Like, okay, I can lean into something else and show up in that way that will actually take me up. So anyway, I just want to share that story because you just were mentioning that attraction piece, and it's really, really powerful because
Yeah.
often I hear, oh, just, push harder. I'm like, well, then they're just going to push back.
Yeah.
We're just creating conflict, where if we can shift into a different, like, just showing it from a different place, different energy, different like emotional like frequency, like, we're right, like all ships are rising. Like we're
I'm
creating a
like
better world. We're creating a
bubbling
better place to
because
work.
yes, exactly. You're creating a better place. I'm like bubbly, like I'm like because this is like my language of like welcome to the Moxie podcast. This month we have been talking about what it looks like to have this rhythms, like the rhythms in our life for leaders and overall this holistic health and the approaches that we take to that. And it has been a joy in all the conversations that I've been able to have with people on our podcast. And so I am just so excited to have Kirsten here with us today and be a part of the Moxie community. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
It is always fun for me. I feel like I'm sure you feel this way too. I have a lot of virtual friends that I feel like I've met in person. You're one of those people where I'm like, yeah, I feel like we've already known each other for a long time. And the reality is it's like been a couple of months through an amazing women's like cooperative group. But I'm sure when and if we ever meet in real life, it'll be really epic. So I'm excited you're here.
Yeah, likewise. Likewise. I know even just in our first interaction with each other, you're one of those people I was like, I need to know her. So,
I love it. Yeah. So I'm just excited for people to get to know who you are. So we're going to start there. Why don't you tell the Moxie community just who you are, what you're best known for, and we'll take it from there and how you also implement, the rhythms just naturally in your life.
yeah, that sounds good. Well, who I am, what I'm up to is I am a life and leadership coach. So I work with individuals and organizations really to help them transform their businesses, their culture, and coming from a place of really who they're being. So very much an inside out approach to help you move faster towards your goals, faster to what you most desire in a way that feels really aligned and true to who you are. And, I just recently realized that this was kind of it's kind of work in progress over a longer term than I thought. Because if I go back, my first client was really my mom, who has a jewelry brand. So that's another part of what I'm up to, is working with her on Class Squared. All of our jewelry is designed and handmade by her. But I decided to join forces with her a while ago now. I think, oh my goodness, probably like 8 to 10 years ago now. And without having any experience in this realm of coaching or consulting, I kind of stepped in as a way to connect with more of a creative outlet that I was seeking at the time, since I was working in corporate. And now that I look back, I was like, oh, I was really planting the seed for the career change that was going to come down the road later on.
I love it. I want to take us back a little bit because I think well, I know that I was in a place like this too, where you like hear people's stories and you're like, man, they just like they sound like they have it together and they're like really excited for what they're doing and the passion behind that. So I want to take us back before you even like kind of stepped into, obviously you said, you started with your mom. Well, naturally you're like just helping your mom like do and build this business. But what were you doing before then that just like really made you gravitate towards leaders, kind of consulting, just being side by side with them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my corporate career, or my, grown up career, out of school, and just kind of, yeah, totally honest, kind of fell into it. Right. I mean, there is power in community and connecting with people and knowing your network really well. So I was referred into technology sales by a close family friend. I, again, fresh out of school, you're just so eager to work and like, make an impact and put your footprint on the ground. And um, so I kind of fell into technology sales. I graduated with a degree in business and a degree in biochemistry. So not technology related, but I learned really quickly that a strength that I had just innately was speaking to people and building relationships with people and coming from a place of curiosity to solve problems for people. So I spent 12 years in a couple of different roles at a couple of different organizations, always in a sales capacity in the technology industry. But in that, this strength and this ability to connect and build trusting relationships with people just continued to be a theme and continued to kind of be my happy place. So it wasn't so much about what I was selling, the technology. It was more about how I was connecting with others. So as I was growing in my career and naturally starting to hit a bit of a professional development kind of ceiling, so to speak, I sought out coaching. And in my experience in working with a coach, it was like, oh, I can help people to solve problems, just different problems in a different way. A really close friend of mine said it best. He was like, you just have a different toolkit. You used to use
Yeah.
technology to solve problems. And he's like, you just have a different toolkit now to help people, whether it's moving their lives forward, their businesses forward. Um, you're just using a different toolkit that's no longer technology. And
Mhm.
so that's kind of the place where these two worlds have bridged. And also having experience working with so many different in a sales capacity. I mean, you work with different customers across different industries, different vertical stages of business. So you also get a really great idea of, what's working and what's not working. And so I love that my work now can help to fill just a different gap.
Yeah. Was that hard? I'm curious, just in a branding perspective. I've been talking to a lot of people about like our messaging and what that looks like,
Yeah.
and of course in a business we're like, who's our ICA and our customer and all that jazz. But like to go from tech to like transition into like, okay, I'm gonna work with leaders. And this is where, I mean, you were experiencing that, but was it difficult to like transition and figure out like your message in that? Did that take a bit or you're just like on it?
That's a really great question. And it's interesting because it's taking me back to your very first question, which was, tell us about yourself and what you're
Yeah.
known
What are you
for.
best known for? That's a really,
Right.
it's always a hard question. I always like put it out there. I'm like, I know it's a very large question, but just work with it.
Yeah,
But yeah.
yeah. And it's, I came from the place of like, okay, what is my kind of role and contribution in my work right now? And if I really take a step back, like in kind of the question you just asked me about the transition, right? Like, what am I best known for in my network of people and actually personal and professional? I'm known for being a high achieving salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
that is what I'm known for. I'm known for being fashionable and creative and active. Like those are the things
Yeah.
that I'm known for.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that you asked that this question now about what the transition was like, though, and if that changed in kind of that messaging or showing up. And I do remember very early on in my coaching and trying to open up this conversation to people already in my network. And I was talking to another peer of mine in the coaching industry, and she was like, give it like hold the space lightly and give it time to land because people have been seeing you showing up as Kirsten, professional, account executive for 12 years. So to
Right.
now say, hey, I'm Kirsten, professional coach, helping you to lead yourself, lead your team, lead others, it's just going to take maybe different language, maybe different timing, maybe different. And so for me, it was a lot of experimenting. And I would say probably still to this day, now online a little bit, maybe a little more repetition, or I kind of have a feel for what's good and what works. But in person, absolutely, if I'm having a conversation with you and finding like what you're up to, what's good in your world and what you're looking to make happen, I might share a little bit differently how I'm showing up to lead, kind of based on where you're coming from. And so I do find that it's kind of a fun it's like I don't know. I kind of play around with it. I kind of like I'm playful with it because at first I tried to be really, really regimented about it and it didn't work. I wanted to own that corporate title again. You know what I mean? And then I remembered that part, like a lot of the fun part about creating your own business is the creating. It's the
Yeah.
creative element. So um definitely I probably am always going to be in a transition as my business also evolves. But yeah, definitely starting to get more comfortable with the language and how I was showing up did take some time when I had been known for something very specific that, especially in corporate, people could understand what that meant.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I was thinking. It's like, when you, it's almost like when you transition home or like you put on one hat to a mom hat or you put on one hat. Like I have people in my life who are a lot of different relationships to me, like they're friend, but they might be a colleague, but they might, and I like, and you
Mhm.
have to be able to naturally switch over those hats in the way that you like present. And it's not inauthentic. It's just as different,
Mhm.
in where you're at and what you're doing. And so, yeah, just curious because and also for our listeners to know it's like it takes time to and it takes experimenting, like you said, to understand and what how you want to show up in the space and in this world and what that looks like. To kind of ground us in this theme of rhythms
Mhm.
of leaders, specifically in the holistic health side of just like how we care for ourselves. I mean, there's a lot of different things we could go in a lot of different directions, but I feel and know that within entrepreneurship, within leaders, whether you're executive, whether you're in corporate, wherever you might be and your feet might land, we tend to work ourselves hard to a point that could potentially lead to burnout. And if you haven't ever experienced it, whoever's listening, that's amazing. Keep going, keep taking care of yourself. We never like to get there, but I would love for you to share personally, if you're okay with that, of just rhythms that you have in your life that keep you grounded as a leader, where then you can show up into spaces for your client and for your customer, in a good space.
Yeah. Wow, there's a lot in that question.
I
Because
know.
one thing, because one thing I'll share just right off the bat, we were talking just before this, you asked me about transitions, right? And one thing that I've learned in this, arena that I'm in now, it takes a different amount of energy to hold space and be present with clients, right?
Mhm.
For those of you who have worked in corporate, we can get caught up a little bit in work for work's sake, right? 9 to 5, fill the time, do something, right? Like you're working. And so some calls you're listening, you're kind of half listening. Some calls you're multitasking, right? And sometimes that's all that's warranted. Like maybe you're introducing somebody, you're letting them have the conversation. It's not from a place of slacking or checking out. It's just this kind of volume of work that creates this kind of false sense of multitasking.
Mhm.
But from in the work I do now, I need to be 100% fully present because as soon as I am thinking about myself, I am completely of disservice to my client.
Mhm.
As soon as I'm wondering if it's like good for them or working, I've totally connected with my ego and it's about me and it's not about them anymore. And so throughout my coaching conversations, I'm before, after, during, you just talked about groundedness, right? And that's been a really big shift for me and something that I have to continue to be aware of, work on. I am an air sign. I actually was looking at my chart recently. There's no earth, ground, earth, like nothing in no moon's sun, none of the things. And I'm not going to pretend that I'm any expert in astrology, but also for me, like humility is like lower on my strengths profile. So, and humility, like we forget, like that's a sense of groundedness. So this has been something that for me, I could run around all day before and get the job done and like do a pretty good job. But now I have to really have some practices that keep me aligned with who I am so that I can be of service to my clients. So to answer your question around maybe what practices, it is a practice. Like I it is a work in progress constantly. Um, Definitely my mornings are really precious to me to set up my day. For me personally, just not looking at a device for at least the first hour. And it might be a variety of things. Of course, every day I do my best to meditate in the morning. I've adopted a new practice where I write down my top 3 goals like right afterwards, just so that it's amazing how when you put that on a page, your energy knows where to flow like the rest of the
Yep.
day. Um, in terms of other practices, definitely getting a walk outside every day. It helps that I have a dog that allows me to do that, but I really try to unplug. I
Mhm.
actually don't often listen to a podcast.
No, I
um,
am so glad you said that because guys, guilty for all of you listening, we love you. I get
exactly.
asked this all the time. They're like, "Oh, you're a podcast. You've been hosting podcasts for 5 years. What are your favorite podcasts?" And I'm like, I don't listen to I need it. I love reading books. I actually audiobook all the time as
Yeah.
well when I'm traveling. But I don't know. I think because for me too, that groundedness, I have so much chatter and narrative going on in my life that like I get my like my curiosity goes into different spaces where I'm still always curious and learning, but the podcast is just not necessarily how I'm taking it in. It's more like
Yes.
I love having one-on-one conversations with people and learning from them and growing from them. But man, it just like my brain, I just can't. Sometimes I just can't. So I haven't found a podcast yet that can steal away my attention long enough. But
Yeah.
we thank you for building this community, guys. Keep listening to the Moxie podcast.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, lots of wisdom in here.
Yes.
And but sometimes, the podcast, sometimes I do listen to podcasts, but I do try to get one time outside where it is
Right.
no other, just disconnecting, right? And actually connecting.
Well, and I
Right?
like that.
Disconnecting from the, yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that you mentioned that because I think sometimes when we do get outside, it's like, oh yeah, I want to okay, listen to podcasts, put on music or whatever it is. But if we actually could just be still and be outside and like really immerse ourselves in the surroundings of just like, I mean, the senses of that. I just don't, we don't, I'm by a window. I'm at, as we're recording this at my mom's house is in the middle of the hill country. So I've been taking walks with my kids because it's just so
Mhm.
beautiful, and it's so grounding. But then at the same time, you can make that same scenario like so loud if you wanted to, and not get as much like internal rest from it. So I totally feel you. People get outside. Okay.
Yeah.
Back to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Well, and I think the two other things that I think from a grounding place, and I guess the first one might sound more from like a healing place, but same kind of both and really. Um, because the other for like I really connect with the water deeply. Like just like I mean, it's my happy place. We kind of have like an inside joke with my mom that if I'm in a bad mood, I need to go for a swim. Now, I do live in Canada. I mean, I live in Toronto, so it's not that cold compared to other parts of the
You
country.
need to
But
come to
like,
where I live, Mombasa. My backyard is the Indian Ocean. You would be in heaven. This is like your heaven there.
there you go. But I do have, well, we call them, camps, but I do have a cottage
Yeah.
also in Northwestern Ontario. And so, um, I'm one really wonderful, beautiful benefit of creating your work is creating the life you want. And, or I guess they kind of go part and parcel together, but, definitely if I can get in the water or near the water, that's also really grounding for me. I mean, my backup when I'm in the city is my bathtub, which again, I try to connect or disconnect, sorry, from technology. But the power of a hot bath and a cold shower in the
Mm.
morning is something actually I discovered during COVID. I thought you only had baths at night and you went to bed, but having a hot bath followed by a cold shower is like, I don't know, for me, it's super
It's
energizing
like
and
a cold
super
plunge
grounding.
situation. You just
Yeah,
created your cold plunge.
as best I can. Yeah, totally,
Yeah,
totally. Yes.
totally.
And then I think the last thing I would add around grounding, and this is maybe not so much a practice, but resource support that helps me is having my own coach,
Mm, yes.
right? That person that kind of reflects back to you what is coming through you or out of you or what the challenges and like being that mirror, um, asking the difficult question to figure out what's really kind of, keeping you maybe a little bit outside of yourself, right? Like having I was talking to a client about this earlier today, about, oh yeah, because you can keep me accountable. I was like, oh no, 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 no. Like, yes, I'm your coach and I'm here for you. But by committing to coaching, you're actually committing to be accountable to yourself. Like that's
Yeah.
really, and that's how I feel too. And having a coach, like it keeps me accountable to me, which also keeps me grounded. So I'd say that's probably the last kind of you know, I guess aspect of how I keep myself in alignment and grounded so that I can, I mean, definitely it's from a place of feeling healthy and whole, but also allows me to be the best possible coach and of service to my clients.
Yeah. No, that's so good. I think rhythms look different for everybody. Like we just
Mhm.
like went back and forth a little bit on that because sometimes people, yeah, you just want to have the music and dance it out or whatever it might be. Podcast might be great for you. We are terrible examples of that, but we're on it. We will deliver the wisdom.
Yes.
But in all of that, I think also acknowledging that rhythms can change, right? Towards the chapters that we
Mm.
are in our life and that if it's not working to recognize that in our body. I think it probably wasn't until the last 5 years, I feel like that I just started to really be in tune with like my body and it reacting to things.
Yeah.
And does that feel like effort or is it easeful? And to not, there's points in our life where, yeah, we have to persevere and push through the effort depending on what it is, right? And there's other times where like we push through and we could actually make the decision to not and like not put put ourselves there. So I think figuring out those rhythms that work for you are so important. I'd be curious, like, with clients and as you work with, high level executives and leaders across sectors, um, what are some themes do you think that you see when they first like come to you? I'd be curious the expectations they have, but then also the themes that you see. And then maybe even the transformation, that you've been able to see as you've been working with them and listening and being being making them accountable to themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, really good questions. And as you were talking about rhythm too, I was thinking back to the question you had just asked and like the burnout piece, right? And that's kind of coming up as
Right.
I'm thinking about a lot of a lot of my clients are in corporate. Although I do have I also have clients that are business owners. So kind of both and, but in the context of like more of that kind of executive level leader role. It's interesting because, what comes up for me is, as I guess as a starting point, in my own experience, like, I don't know, I came to this realization the other day that like I've never like I was sitting in a circle of people talking about burnout and was like, I don't fit in here. Like something wrong with me that I've never burnt out before. And like, I mean, I shared some grounding practices with you,
Mm,
but by no
that's so
means am I
beautiful.
perfect that I'm like doing my 30-minute journal every day and drinking matcha lattes and like regulating my nervous system all the time. Like, no, no, like by no means, but I'm the person that like thrives when things get fast and tough and
Yeah.
piled up on my plate to the point of overwhelm where this is how the way my mom framed it. I'm not a burnout person, I'm a meltdown person.
Mm,
So I like to have like mini meltdowns when things start to get like I get the energy and momentum. And this is also what makes you really successful as a salesperson, right? You're like gonna get the deal, get the momentum, get her done, whatever. And then you kind of get to a point sometimes where there's just like too much. And I see a lot of this in my clients
I can
too.
relate to that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can relate to that. The mini meltdown and then kind of the stagnation happens and you're like, I don't want to go out of bed for like a couple days. Okay, then I'm alive again.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Like today I'm just gonna cry
yeah,
and then tomorrow it'll be fine.
right.
But totally, totally. And so I do see this happen with clients
Mm,
too, where they've been in these patterns, really rhythms of
right.
go, 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 did the thing, take a mini break. Go, 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 do the thing, take a mini break. And so in terms of the work that we do together, um, kind of back to your question, is or the challenge for them is really slowing them down
Mm,
because often what they think they want or what they think they should be doing or the way they think they should be operating is coming from sources outside of themselves. It's coming from how they've seen other people do it. It's coming from, again, like this ego driven, like I need to prove myself. It's coming from this like badge of honor that I get up at 4 and go to bed at 11, and oh my God, I worked a like an 80-hour week. And I'm sure, by the way, business owners and entrepreneurs are also relating to this. But again,
Yes.
this is kind of that executive, and when you're in a corporation, kind of that like, oh, but if I work harder, then I'm more valuable too, right? Like I'm
Right.
not just another cog in the wheel that can end up on this layoff list or whatever it might be. And so a lot of the work is slowing down, like literally, like letting them talk it through, to slow them down, to just get them present with where they are, and not kind of into this like uh energy, well, kind of like it's going to fizzle and fade out. I mean, I hope to work with
Mhm.
them before they're getting to the point of burnout. And then really helping them to understand and reconnect to like who they are. Like I said, earlier, strength of mine is trust, building relationships. It's a core value of mine. Helping them from that place of just some language around being able to articulate what their values are, awareness around their strengths, what comes easily, leaning into what's good,
Mhm.
not focusing on, oh, I'm missing these three. Like, no, 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 we can find someone to do that. Let's focus on what's good. And then starting to really connect with like who they're being, that is influencing the actions they're taking, that is then driving the results they want to see. You asked, you said, is a client experience transformation or any kind of change or shift. And I think about one client in particular, and naturally coming from the tech industry, I do attract some people that are in the tech sector. And I mean, I have a degree in science, so I totally get the kind of, black and white thinking, right? That trying to get into this, okay, who am I being? How am I showing up? No, 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 no. I just got to go do the thing, right?
Yeah.
But when we got to a place where he could start to connect and reflect with how he was showing up and who he was being, like things shifted. Like it was, I see the potential in people and I want to help people and I want to lead people, but it was coming from this place of like, I want to, I need to, this makes my ego look, like I'm the knight in shining armor. But when we shifted away from what it looked like to everybody else and more to how he wanted to show up, and he used words like optimistic, open, encouraging. So we had like those three things that we always visited. Like, okay, I'm being open, I'm being optimistic, I'm being encouraging, right? I'm not kidding, I'm not kidding. Like by the next call, like in a week, he's like, the craziest thing happened. And I was like, tell me more. It's like, well, I had like 10 people like come into my office, like knock on my door and ask me for help, or ask me how I could do, like how they could be doing something better or different. Like they just
Mhm.
came, like they just showed up at my door. And I thought, oh, is that interesting? Were you being like open and optimistic? And like it was just a complete shift. Like he knew he wanted
Yeah.
to help people, but he was showing up in a way that was actually repelling them, not attracting them. And
Right.
so when we started to connect from this other place of who he was being, it literally opened the floodgates. Like it opened the doors to people coming in and feeling like they could trust him, that, what he had to share was something that could be helpful and valuable for them. And it was great too, because like one of his values is service. So it was
Mm.
completely in alignment. He wasn't going after something else that someone else told him to do. He was totally in alignment with his own value. It was just coming back to who he was being and slowing himself down out of that like day-to-day grind that had become so familiar. But it just like unlocked this whole other way of connecting and inspiring like the next generation of leaders in his organization.
That's such a great example. I actually teach on a method called shift, and it
Mm.
has like so many different words, and like the power of words alone, like instead of being fearful, like how can you build trust? Instead of being like, you know, exhausted, how can you build enthusiasm? Like all these different things that we can look at. And I love how you're saying being open and optimistic and just like showing up in that space. Like the power of attraction is just like it is that it's powerful. And like,
Totally. And I got really excited there because you reminded me of
yeah.
another really good story. If I have time, I'll share it really
Yes,
quickly.
yes.
But I was just thinking another client, and she's in a pretty senior level role too. And I mean, it goes without saying, right? Like we are still living in a world where we do have to work a little harder as women. Definitely the technology industry, we're outnumbered. So sometimes it's really checking into to see like, is it me or is it them? And often
Mm-hmm.
like it's still us. Like you have to be
Mm-hmm.
responsible for us first and foremost. And I was just thinking you were sharing that like that attracting piece, right?
Right.
And she was going to be shifting into a new role, like actually a promotion, which was like super exciting. It's what she wanted. But then she was starting to like, okay, now I'm going to have to report to this different leader, and like, how do I show up? Because I'm like, she just was feeling a little about it, and like, and frustration kept coming up. She's like,
Right.
well, I'm just frustrated. I'm just frustrated. I was like, okay, well, how can we, what would pivot? Like, what would shift out of frustration? Because if you meet, like, if you come in frustrated, you're just going to be met with frustration, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you come in with conflict and negativity, like that person, like defense meets defense. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to like, and you're just going to go nowhere because you're just going to be up against each other. So instead of being frustrated with kind of how like this leader had been communicating, what if we got curious about why they're communicating that way? And instead
Mm-hmm.
of communicating frustration, what if you came from a place of curiosity?
Mm-hmm.
And it like well, the law of attraction, like the defense meeting defense was
Yep.
like eye opening for her, like kind of blew her mind because she realized how much throughout her career she'd already kind of gone in with her back up a little bit and how it was not serving her. But as soon as she could take like just be aware of how that energy around frustration like pulled her down, she could like find the antidote or the other side of it, like okay, I can lean into something else and show up in that way that will actually take me up. So anyway, I just want to share that story because you just were mentioning that attraction piece, and it's really, really powerful because
Yeah.
often I hear, oh, just push harder. I'm like, well, then they're just gonna push back.
Yeah.
We're just creating conflict where if we can shift into a different, like just showing it from a different place, different energy, different like emotional like frequency, like we're right, like all ships are rising. Like we're
I'm
creating a
like
better world. We're creating a
bubbling
better place to
because
work.
yes, exactly. You're creating a better place. I'm like bubbling, like I'm like because this is like my language of like, and in frustration, in fact, like there's this like transition line, and that's discomfort, that's frustration, that's ambiguity. There's this line that we get to choose whether we want to take that frustration, yes, and then go to a distrust, or yes, go to an even, lower like overwhelm or whatever that might be. Or yeah, we take the frustration, like you're saying, and come with curiosity and come with an open mind and come with authenticity. And this just like we can name tons of different patterns and words to that. But I love that. It's such an aha moment because I think and even like, okay, when I met you and when we've only obviously met virtually as we have said that, but even on a screen, it's like the power of attraction, like, I want to get to know you. I want to know who you are. When
Mm.
we're in like the big groups, it's so funny. Like, and I'm always like looking at people's screen. Like when people like have their video off, I'm like, man, you're doing
Mm.
yourself like injustice because like you can show up, you can still be grounded, you can still show like your light through your pineal gland, you can be there, you can be present as much as you want to be, and people are going to feel that. Obviously it's so much more powerful when we're in a place and in the same place and in person, but you can still feel people's energy and what that looks like. And so um I love all of that. And I love that you've seen that transformation within just your clients, but and how that they can break those patterns. There's so many different rhythms we could, continue to talk about. And like mentioned, it looks different in spaces, looks different for different people. But I think at the end of the day, it's just realizing I'm going to circle back to what you said, that it starts with you.
Mhm.
And like there's an energy and a frequency we hold, and we need to learn how to hold that firm in a way that's, making everyone better together. We need to hold our personal space before we could ever influence our near spaces, and it needs to be in a way that's, beautiful and grounded. And so we need to get still, and we need to have these practices, as especially as leaders. I want one, I like we could talk for hours. I want people to know where they can find you, first of all, and just where that is. If there's any resources you might have that they can like dig into, and we'll make sure we have that in the show notes. But how about you share that?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, check out the show notes because I know my name is a little bit of a mouthful to spell
Yes, it
because
will
my
it'll all
social
be there.
my social handles, my website, my email all have my full name Kirsten Schmidtke in them. So, but that is the best place to find me. Like Instagram and LinkedIn are where I kind of hang out mostly from a social media perspective. I do send out a weekly email. I've actually kind of recreated it into something fun that allows my subscribers to get kind of a feel of an experience of coaching by just reading. So if you are, something maybe sparked your curiosity in this conversation, yeah, please do subscribe. I also ask clients to, or sorry, subscribers, well, clients too. But if there's a question that they want answered too, which I'll answer in my email. So I really love to write. So in terms of resources, there's tons of great blog content on my website. Excuse me. And there's some other resources on there too. I have journal prompts. I've got my like reading list. So if you want some book recommendations, and I'm also happy always to answer a DM or even just hop on a call. Like we were just talking about that, right? This like connecting, like having conversations, grounding you, even if they are virtual, or if you're in the Toronto area, I'm happy to meet you face to face, but I'm always here and always open for a conversation with anybody.
So good. Thank you so much, Kirsten, for being
Yeah.
here, and just being part of our community. I love to leave our listeners with a little bit of an encouragement into the next week just to keep them going. So, is there one last thing to live by that you would like to share with us?
Um, there, there's one principle that I would love to just offer. And this also helps me to stay grounded, in staying aligned to who I am, staying authentic in who I am. And it's something that like really created some space and I found really liberating that I wish I hadn't known earlier in my career. But that is to like not take things personally.
Mm,
And it seems simple and it might seem, like what, like don't take it personally. Like that, do I do like you might need to let it like settle in your mind for a second because it's something that is super, super simple, but not super, super easy.
mm,
But when you can apply it, it is liberating. Like it frees up space in like physically in your space, in your mind, in your calendar, in your home, in your all the things, right? And it can be as simple as like a friend not getting back to you about plans, as simple as like a client maybe not returning an email. It's super powerful and like saying, well, I'm going to follow up. And I've done that with people who have gone into this like long-winded apology about that they didn't reply. And I'm like, I'm not here to seek your apology. I'm just, we have
yeah.
no idea what's going on in other people's lives. And I think that is a huge, huge takeaway or kind of gift that we learned being, isolated for a couple of years.
Mm,
Is like, we really don't know what's going on in other people's worlds. So if you can just let go of taking things personally, it really can just create like that freedom you're seeking. You can like start to experience it now by just embracing that principle.
yeah. If you're in your 20s, like, please listen to this because I feel like we've got like, I'm like, does this come with maturity and experience where you like stop taking things personal? But like, if you can get this, this is such great, like, one last thing to live by. If you can get this at an early age, so if you are listening in your 20s, like, really take this to heart. Because I can look back at so many things in my early career and I'm like, why was I like that? Like, why it had nothing to do with me. But so I did. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's so practical, and such a good tip. So Kirsten, thank you for being part of the Moxie community and the podcast. And it's always a joy to talk to you and to be in the
Yeah,
space together. So thank you so
amazing.
much.
Thank you for having me. This was lovely.
Yeah. And for all of you listening, I am So excited for you guys to be in this month with us. And I hope you enjoy the week. And as always, Oxy on.